Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you over at patreon.com/TAC. For more podcasts like The Angry Chicken, check out amove.tv. That's AMOVE.tv.
Hey everyone! Get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is The Angry Chicken.
Greetings and welcome back, everyone, to The Angry Chicken. I'm Garrett. I'm here as always with Jocelyn. Hi, Joss.
Hello, hello.
And we are joined by another guest this week. This is I think the longest string of guests back to back to back we've ever pulled off on this show. And it's a great one. One of the more requested guests for the longest period of time. You may know her for her casting. If you're at Team 5, you may know her as the person you just hired. Cora is joining us here today on The Angry Chicken. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's weird that I haven't managed to make it on before this, but I'm super excited to finally be here.
You've always been too busy. I'm so glad we were able to actually nail you down for a sitting of Angry Chicken, because honestly, man, you were just all over the place with all your travel and all your casting. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I've been a big fan of the show for many years now, and obviously, Joss, you and I are great friends. So this is really fantastic timing, because much later than this, and it'll be a lot more difficult for me to be on podcasts. So
Yes,
well.
I know. I was like, as soon as I saw the news, I was like, "Yay!"
Oh
no.
You're good. You got to me before they did. So
Excellent.
Joss and I were exchanging Discord messages. As soon as I saw the news, I was just like, "Hey, Joss, are we two-manning it on Tuesday?" Or and then I saw you tweet out, Cora, that you were still coming on. I was like, "Oh, sweet, awesome, it's still working." Good to know, because I didn't know when your start date was. But congrats, it was good news to hear that. Well, I will say mixed news to hear, because I'm assuming I won't see you casting too much more.
Yeah, that's the plan for right now. I do still hope to be able to cast particularly TESPA Collegiate a little bit here and there, but there's red tape that I have to go through and certain things that I need to apply for, I think, to actually be able to do that. So for the first bit of time when I start work, I don't start working until start to middle of October. So we're a couple months away still. I do just want to focus on getting settled. Obviously, I'm moving across the country for the first time. I'm going to be living by myself, which is very exciting, but also quite scary. And I'm learning an entirely new job. So yeah, for the first bit of time, I'm going to be taking some time off, but I do still want to cast as much as I can. I just don't know how much that will be, I guess. So fingers crossed.
That's great. It's I guess it's media training, right? I like to think that they have I don't know, if you work on the team and then you also cast, that they have flashcards of what you're allowed to talk about.
I don't know how it works. That's the thing. I know for instance, TJ Sanders.
TJ's the first one that came into my head. I'm like, if they let TJ, they better let you.
Yeah, but TJ works on the esports team, and he works specifically with casters. So I think for him, it's much easier to sort of double dip. With me, I would be taking time specifically away from the office. Even though, TESPA takes place in Burbank, Blizzard campus is obviously in Irvine. It's not terribly far. It would still be something that takes me away from my primary objective, whereas with TJ, it's a lot more intertwined, I think.
Right.
So it's a little bit more straightforward for him. But yeah, it was something that when I was interviewing, I made it very clear to be like, is this something that I can still do, specifically because TESPA is the program that I'm most passionate about, and it is, conveniently enough, a program that's owned by Blizzard. So there would be no conflicts. No conflicts. Yeah, no conflict of interest there. And they said that they think it shouldn't be an issue. So maybe not this season, but I'm hopeful for the spring season.
So you're going to be actually on the final design team at Blizzard, right? So yes. What are you most looking forward to shifting away from casting into this career? Like what's the big thing that you're like, yay, I get to do?
I'm very excited to stretch my creative muscles again with commentary. And don't get me wrong, I love commentary. I love the work that I've been doing for the last few years, but it's all very analytical. Not a lot of room to be very creative, and I'm a very creatively minded person. So I'm excited to get to work with others to come up with ideas and to execute those ideas. And with final design, it is more so balanced design than initial creative design is. But there is a lot of overlap between the two teams, so much so that occasionally team members will get moved from final to initial for the duration of an expansion or something like that. So there is some input from final on the creative process, which I'm excited to sort of dip my toes into that and learn how that all works. But I'm guessing for the first bit of time, just while I'm getting used to everything and really learning the job, there are some specific things that I don't know much about, like coding, for instance, that I'm going to have to learn the process that they specifically use to do so. I'll be more so balancing cards and expansions. I'll be play testing quite a bit. I will be building decks and trying to essentially figure out what is the best way that these cards can be used and how can I best break these cards, I guess, and see if there are any holes that I can find in them. And I'm really excited to do that. I love deck building. I obviously love playing Hearthstone. It's what I do all day, every day. So it's just going to be a different version of that, I guess. I really couldn't have picked a better job for myself. And I never would have applied for a design position because, spoiler alert, I don't really have a design background. But the final design team in particular specified they wanted somebody with fantastic communication skills and high-level Hearthstone gameplay. So I figured if I'm ever going to get involved in Hearthstone design, this is the way to do it. And clearly they agreed with me. So, yeah.
So you mentioned that like you don't necessarily have a design background, but you do love Hearthstone. What originally was it that drew you to Hearthstone? Because I think did you come from like a Pokemon background, or was like Hearthstone your first card game?
So I've been playing card games pretty much my whole life. I started with Pokemon when I was very young, and then I actually played Yu-Gi-Oh for about 10 years. So I started playing Hearthstone during the open beta right when I was going into college. So I was 18 years old at the time, and I had played Yu-Gi-Oh for, like I said, about a decade, but only, with my brother and my dad, the occasional local tournament, nothing big. And then when I went off to college, I started playing Hearthstone, which I just thought was the coolest thing ever, because whenever I wanted to play against another person, I could. And that was a very new thing for me. I could never do that with Yu-Gi-Oh or with Pokemon TCG. So I just absolutely loved it. And I was a broadcast communication major in college. I had my bachelor's. And it was, a great program, but it wasn't as busy as some of my friends who were, music education or who were computer science. So I had a fair bit of downtime the first couple of years. And in that downtime, I played Hearthstone. And then by the time I was a junior, I was very good at it. So yeah, that's sort of how I got into the process. And then my junior year, I was commentating a little bit online just because it was fun, and I was a broadcast major, so I figured it would be a good experience.
Yeah, and then you won So You Think You Can Cast, and everybody knows where you went from there.
Yeah. I applied for that my junior year of college, and I still remember getting the call from Rob Wing saying that they wanted me to come out and being like, oh, Lord. I feel like a lot of my life with these things, thinking that nothing is going to come out of it, and then something comes out of it, and then I'm like, oh, now I'm in too deep. Now I need to do this. Kind of what happened with the design job. I was like, there's no way they're going to pick me for this. Like, I don't have a background. They've got to have people who are more qualified. And then they're like, oh, you're hired. And now I'm like, oh, now I have to move to California and buy a car and ship my stuff. And what am I going to do with my cat? And yeah. So I sort of rode the wave of commentary for 3 years. And now here I am. I'm making the first big change since I graduated from college.
That is so awesome. It's like, it's cool hearing more about, I mean, we've heard about like I don't know, not the hierarchy, but the way that the different design teams, where they fall along the course of balancing the cards. And it's cool that you're going to be towards the end of that process, just trying to break everything. You might find the next prismatic lens and to tip the scales before it actually goes live.
I just got beaten by that like 20 minutes ago. Very fresh in my mind. And I'm going to be working with some of the best in the business. The final design team it's run by Ixar, Dean Ayala. and then I'll be working alongside Puffin, Reels, and Chalky. So the four of us all came from a Hearthstone player background. Reels and Puffin have been on the final design team for several years now. Chalky just joined last year. So I'm in very, very good company. I feel like I have a lot to live up to, but also I couldn't imagine learning from better people because they've been in my shoes before. They know what it's like to transition from a player background or a content creator background to a designer. So I just think it's a really good fit, and I'm very excited. I think it's gonna be really good.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about all the other folks that are on the team with a similar background to yours, it to me, from the outside looking in, it makes a lot of sense that they went with you. Although I don't know how much coding background any of them had either, but it's very cool. And then you're right, like Reels and Puffin have been on the team for so long, and it's just like, I bet you're going to be there a while, Cora.
I hope so. Like I was saying, it's a very big change for me. It's definitely a step outside of my comfort zone of the work that I've just been doing for the last 3 years, which has been full-time commentary. But they wouldn't have hired me if they didn't think that I could do the job. So I'm confident that they know better than I do what the job entails.
I really like clinging on to your whole, I just want to be creative again, because I have a creative background as well, not the same, but the same thing, the same feelings that I've been the last few years spending a lot of time on the side, outside of podcasting, outside of like my public facing stuff, doing video editing, and I've been really enjoying it, and I just keep kind of digging deeper and deeper into it, and I haven't really found a good way to apply it to what we're doing here, but it's been super, super fulfilling. So like, oh God, I feel that. I really feel that.
Yeah, well, because before I got into gaming and esports, I was a musician. I've been singing my whole life. I was a wedding singer for several years, and I always thought that I wanted to pursue music professionally. And then I just went to school for broadcast because it was the practical thing to do at the time. And then when I graduated, I would move into the music industry. And before I had even graduated, I was already involved in esports and so deeply embedded in commentary. And I loved it so much that I wanted to make it work. But then music and everything that I loved for so much longer than I even knew, competitive gaming was a viable career path, just sort of got thrown to the side. So I've been trying to incorporate that more in my life. And I think a 9-to-5 job with some creativity in the workspace and then options for leaving the work at work. And then
my God, I know those feels.
Exactly. With commentary, if you're not playing Hearthstone outside of work, you feel like you're wasting time.
Yeah.
So my work life and my home life have been so deeply ingrained in each other for the last 3 years that I haven't really had any separation. And it takes a toll on you when all you do is work or work-oriented things. You start to like the work a lot less. So I'm very much looking forward to actually having a place to go to work in my bedroom. And then when I get home from work, I can sort of leave it. I'm very excited about that.
That is another thing that hits me in the feels.
Mm-hmm. And it's not something that I'd ever thought about or ever considered, because I always knew I wanted a non-traditional career. I always said I don't want to do a desk job, but then the older you get and the more you start thinking about what you want for the future, like, do I want a family someday? Like, I want a dog. And then there's a lot of things that you can't do when you're a contract employee, which is
and
what I was.
Constantly traveling as well.
Exactly. I could never get a pet with all of the traveling that I was doing. But now, a couple of months into my lease, when I'm working in Irvine, if the job is going well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get a dog because I can. And it's really exciting. It feels like I lived those years of my life doing all of the traveling and doing all of the inconsistent work, but loving every second of it. But I feel like I'm a little bit older now. I'm a little bit more, I guess, wanting to be settled. And I want to do work that I can build upon and work that I can be recognized for and then, be improving at and eventually maybe be promoted or move up in the chain of command and do something that I can see doing for a very long time. And with commentary, I have felt quite a bit stagnant in the last year and a half or so. So I'm excited to sort of just just break into something new where there's new opportunity and there's new potential.
I just find that, you know, obviously I find this entire subject of as you said, like a non-traditional career, but also like creatives and just how do you build a professional life like this? I find this so fascinating, obviously, because I'm very much in a similar school.
Yeah.
But like bringing it back to kind of your whole trajectory, because I know like we're a little off the path of Hearthstone here, but we hear so frequently from listeners who want to get into what we're doing or want to get into what you're doing. And like how much of it was you just constantly putting yourself out there and saying, okay, well, here's a new puzzle, let's solve it. Or did you have a plan, or was a lot of it kind of just rolling with the punches?
I never had a plan. I was 20 years old when I started. I was casting before I even had a college degree, and I never expected to have my life figured out at that point. I still don't have my life figured out. But like I was saying, I just sort of rode the wave. And I'm a very competitive person by nature. I don't like losing. I don't like failing. And I think that drives a lot of the work that I do, because I was not content with not making it in the commentary world. And I get people asking me all the time, how I want to do this job. How do I do this? How do I break into this? And the fact of the matter is, Hearthstone commentary in particular was a very different world 3 years ago than it is now. It was a world where there's a lot more third-party events that you can talk to the organizers specifically and make those relationships and go to work for companies that are putting on Hearthstone tournaments that aren't Blizzard in particular, like DreamHack, for instance. I had no relationship with DreamHack, but I had a friend who knew the talent manager for DreamHack Hearthstone, and he gave me his email address. So I shot the talent manager an email like 2 years ago now and was like, I just wanted to introduce myself. I know DreamHack Austin is coming up, and if you're looking for commentators, I would love to be a part of it. And he was like, cool, let's make it happen. And I did Austin, and then I did Montreal, and then I did Atlanta, and then in 2018, I did all of the DreamHack Hearthstone Grand Prix tournaments. It really was just a matter of me finding the opportunities and putting myself in the right position to be able to reap the rewards from them. But Hearthstone now, with Grandmasters being the primary competitive format, with third-party events not really existing, it's not a world that you can really break into. And so this year in particular, I just haven't really been working. I picked up some Pokemon TCG work that I've been doing for the last 2 years now, and I love it, but it's not consistent enough for me to transition to Pokemon full-time or to even support myself with Pokemon and the very, very little bit of Hearthstone that I was doing, because pretty much the only work that I could guarantee for this year with Hearthstone was collegiate. And it's just not enough, unfortunately. So yeah, I knew either I needed to make a move into another game or into generalized hosting, or I needed to find something else to do, because Hearthstone commentary with not casting GM just wasn't an option anymore. And that sucked. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow. And it's something that took several months of me sitting around and feeling sorry for myself and complaining to other friends who were in the same situation, who were essentially out of work because of the new competitive format. And then eventually we picked ourselves up and we figured out what we were going to do with our careers and with our lives. And I started applying for other jobs in the industry. And I have friends who started commentating for other games. But it's just been a really tough process for the last 6 months or so, I would say. And I'm very lucky with where I landed. I didn't want to leave Hearthstone, which is why I started applying for jobs within Hearthstone or jobs within esports that weren't necessarily like moving to commentate like Magic the Gathering, for instance. I didn't want to do that. So I looked for other options first, and I'm ecstatic with what I ended up with. I couldn't have imagined a better fit for me. But yeah, the whole commentary in Hearthstone right now, it's in a weird place. Yeah. So things are certainly very different from when I started.
It feels very locked in from the outside looking in.
It feels like there's no room for movement.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm very excited at the concept of a job with upward mobility, because it feels like if I kept going in Hearthstone, maybe they expand Grandmasters next year. Maybe DreamHack gets back into Hearthstone and there's more space for myself and for other tier 2 commentators, but maybe they don't. And if they don't, I would be waiting until maybe another 6 months from now, doing nothing and not advancing my life and not advancing my career. And I didn't want to be stagnant for that long. I'm too restless for that. I'm too driven for that. I didn't want to have to wait around twiddling my thumbs, not doing anything. So yeah, I chose not to.
Well, we're very, very happy for you. I think that you've landed in a really, really good place. And I think it's too bad with what's happened with the, I guess, Hearthstone commentary, just kind of in general. It's too bad there aren't some more opportunities, because I think new voices in the scene are really important. And I've been saying that for years. But yeah, we're really, really proud of you, really happy for you. And I can't wait to see you on piloting some decks on those reveal streams.
Oh, God, no. No. That's another thing, actually. I'm very excited to not be in front of an audience all the time anymore.
Yeah.
I loved the work that I was doing. I loved commentating. I did not love being in front of a camera. I did not love being at the mercy of an audience of people who maybe didn't like me for whatever reason. And I'm very excited.
It's exhausting.
I know that the Hearthstone audience criticizes the dev team to no end, but when they criticize the dev team, they criticize it as a unit. When I was being criticized, I was being singled out. And after 3 years of that, some of it being relevant, and some of the criticism being warranted, but a lot of it not, I'm very excited to not have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
And not have to put myself in a position to be in front of a firing squad, because it sucked. And a lot of the times I couldn't say anything about it, because if I did, I was deemed sensitive or defensive or couldn't take criticism. And it wears at you, guys. It really wears you down after having to listen to all that for 3 years. And it's happening right now with a lot of the articles that were being written up about my having gotten this job. The one on Hearthstone is like 40% auto hidden comments because they're just trash. But it's like, you know what? I'm keeping myself going by saying soon enough, I don't have to look at that anymore. And I don't have to put myself in front of that anymore. And it feels so good.
Hey, you know who didn't get a job at Blizzard? Those people.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
God, yeah. You just keep hitting on strings that I feel run very deep in myself. Like, you're talking about this whole thing, and it was something I never thought of getting into the podcast game. Like, my first few jobs, like growing up, like when I was a teenager, was being a waiter, and I couldn't wait for the days when it was my turn to go wash dishes, because I just didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to deal with people who had an issue with their meal or whatever, and once the day came that we had more than like 2 downloads on an episode and people started actually, criticizing the show, I was like, oh no, I'm just a waiter online.
Oh no, I did it again.
Yes. Yeah. What have I done to myself? I went down this path because I thought it meant I didn't have to be a customer service person, but here I am.
You're just trying to sell yourself instead of trying to sell food.
Yeah. Which hurts more.
It's worse when you're the product.
I can't deflect to the sandwich.
I can't control the way that I look or the way that I sound or the fact that you don't like me. But I still have to deal with it. And it's exhausting. So it's very bittersweet having to set this time in my life behind me and leave it in the past. And like I was saying, I hope that I get to commentate a little bit still. But I think it's going to be very healthy for me overall to not be in that situation full time, because it just wasn't a good place for me to be anymore. And it's sad to say that, because I never wanted to be the one to quit, and I never wanted to be the one to let it get to me and to let the naysayers win, especially since with there being so little room in the Hearthstone commentary scene for upward mobility and for movement within commentary. Gia's very limited by the fact that she's a native of the Philippines, and now I'm leaving the scene in a large capacity. I don't know if what this means for women in Hearthstone commentary, and I'm very sad about that. But at the end of the day, I have to look out for myself, and I have to do what's best for me.
Gia's situation is so unfortunate because she's such a wonderful caster. She's so smart, and having the two of you in the Hearthstone scene definitely made it a little bit easier for the rest of us, if I'm going to be totally selfish here, because it was like a little bit of a like there was like a community, there was a network of people that could support each other in a way that a lot of the guys just don't understand. Like the stuff we read, the stuff we see, the stuff we go through. And I mean, like I said, I'm super happy for you, but Hearthstone has definitely lost something not having you behind the desk.
Yeah, it's very sad.
I just hope they open it up a little bit more. I hope that they give more opportunities for more people to get in there.
I will say selfishly, I love the work that the design team is doing. I think Hearthstone as a game is moving in a good direction. Hearthstone
it feels
esports,
so good right now.
Yes, the game feels in a very good spot to me, and it feels like we're making progress. And there's way more that can be done. Don't get me wrong; like there's a lot that needs to be done and that can be done, but it feels like it's moving in a positive direction. Hearthstone esports is something that I don't know. I'm confused by a lot of the decisions that they've made, and I've been hurt by a lot of the decisions that they've made. And it's, you know what? I love the commentators. I'm very entertained by Grandmasters. I think it's a good program. I think the guys are doing great work. But it's just, I think, a good decision for me to separate myself from it and to distance myself from it.
I think we're going to touch on a little bit of that today when we get to some of our news pieces. So we'll probably circle back around to that topic because it seems so, I think, a good, at least a certain amount, again, from the outside looking in, of the movement in casting talent is kind of tied to the health and also the variety of esport events, which at least on the variety front, there isn't that much outside of Blizzard sponsored or Blizzard sanctioned events. But yeah, there's quite a bit to talk about on that front. But yeah, thanks for getting so personal at the top of the show and sharing like your whole journey with us. It's been
there's a lot that's been building up in me in the last few days since I've made this announcement, and a lot of comments that I've seen. And I don't want to, now I have to worry about, I have an overarching employer, and it's not about me anymore. I'm not the product anymore. Hearthstone is the product now, and I need to keep that in mind. So I haven't wanted to make a lot of these comments on social media. And also I think it just doesn't do any good to put that negativity onto my feed and to show it to other people, because I'm sure a lot of them are unaware that it even exists. And my reception on Twitter, for instance, was incredible, absolutely incredible. Not one single negative thing was said. Everybody was so thrilled for me. I was blown away. But there are still, a lot of things that I have been wanting to say, and I was kind of saving it for this and for the TAC audience. So hopefully,
yay! Thank you.
Hopefully you guys are cool with me getting a little real.
Absolutely.
This is such a deep dive into what it's like to have your kind of career. It's a hell of a trajectory. So we will probably continue talking about it, but let's just go ahead and gear shift right into the news topics of this week, because there's quite a bit to talk about.
Good news, everyone!
So before we get back to esports, let's talk about the game itself, because we got a Zephyrus Hotfix. Zephyrus, I think, impressed us even more than I thought it was going to. I'm so impressed by this card and by the fact that Highlander decks are even working, because I swore up and down that everyone was still just going to be throwing bombs in your deck and it was going to be pointless. But it turns out Zephyrus, a very successful card, but did have a couple bugs that they have since fixed. Apparently Zephyrus didn't quite know how to handle enemy Divine Shields properly, was a little perplexed by the way that Divine Shields worked, as well as Poisonous. Also, Zephyrus didn't consider that buffing a 0 attack minion would let it attack that turn. That has also been fixed. And then the biggest one was that they specifically went in and targeted Zephyrus and Zephyrus's understanding of Doomsayers and how Doomsayers work.
That's my favorite line of this whole entire post. Is just, we taught Zephyrus how Doomsayers work.
Yeah,
it's just hilarious.
Yeah, I thought that was
so funny.
really, really good flavor in your hotfix notes. And then we got a good dev comment that kind of gave us a peek behind the curtain as to how they plan to approach Zephyrus. And they said, as a rule, we don't plan to teach Zephyrus about individual card mechanics and interactions. However, we've made a one-time exception, since having, in their words, less than perfect offerings from Zephyrus when trying to find an answer to a Doomsayer could cause you to lose your board or end up with no good plays for that turn. So I'm glad that they made a one-time exception in this case, especially since Doomsayer is still seeing play. So
yeah, Doomsayer's all over the place, right? So I feel like it's an important interaction that he needed to understand.
Yeah. Oh, there are
lots of Reno Mage.
Yeah.
There are some boards post Uldum. There are some boards that need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was happy to see this, and I'm hoping more. We might be doing a Zephyrus thing soon. I'm very excited about it, and that's all I'm gonna tease. Nothing's in stone.
Fun.
Yeah, there's nothing set in stone, so I can't make a hard announcement. But something cool will be coming soon.
Teasing an announcement of an announcement.
Hey, I'm still.
You gotta do it.
You got it. Yeah, one day I may apply for a job at Blizzard, and the more announcements that I can point to, I think the better my chances are.
You gotta drag out the excitement a lot.
Yeah.
I was posting teasers when I was going for my on-site interview. I'm like, hold up, guys, this is really exciting, but I can't tell you what it is. And they were like, oh, tell us. And I was like, oh, but it's so great. And I was like, no, I can't do it. And then finally, when it came out, you build that tension.
See, Cora gets it.
Yeah, Cora gets it.
All right back to Hearthstone Esports. It wasn't that long of a detour. Dog has quit Grandmasters. Has stepped away in favor of streaming, and people have opinions.
Surprising no one.
Everybody's got an opinion.
So this is starting season 2, which is August 23rd through I think October 13th. So Dog is no longer going to be in Grandmasters, which means that Galen has actually taken over his spot. And there's actually a clarification over on Twitter of which promotion rule it actually was. I think it's like 6.2b or something of why Galen got the spot.
That's exactly what it is, and it's ridiculous. It's like an officer pulled me over for speeding, but like it was a really specific number, and he had to cite a law, and that's ridiculous.
Yeah, because there were a lot of people initially upset because at first, basically the post from Hearthstone Esports said, oh, yep, Dog's dropping out and Galen's taking his spot and let's go, and gave no reason for the promotion at all. And obviously Galen was the player who had, the win or the second place finish in the previous Masters in Vegas. And there were lots of different things that led to his being promoted. But I think for some people, they thought it was only because of Vegas and because the Grandmaster rules weren't kind of given to the players ahead of time for who is actually going to get in. I think there were a lot of disappointments and hurt feelings and misunderstandings tied to Grandmasters, period. And then to see Galen get promoted, it was kind of like a but why moment. So they've since clarified that. And I think he's a great player to be a part of the Grandmasters. And I don't think Dog stepping down is any surprise to anyone who's been paying even a little bit of attention. He's been talking about losing money and, not enjoying playing in Grandmasters almost since Grandmasters started. So I don't really think this was a surprise.
Yeah, I was not surprised to see it. It was definitely a shame. I think Dog is a big viewership draw. Certainly, he's one of the biggest Hearthstone streamers when he chooses to stream Hearthstone, although he's been streaming a lot of TFT as of late. But I mean, a lot of
Hearthstone people have been streaming TFT because I keep going to my following and I'm like,
there's nobody.
Watch TFT. Where's all the Hearthstone players?
Yeah, it was a shame that it was very quickly after he did win the Masters Tour in Las Vegas. So he put up that massive performance, and then you find out he's leaving. And I was in contention for actually being in Grandmasters, which was a weird time in my life. And I know from my experience with it, there were lots of people in North America who were only going to get spots in Grandmasters if people did not accept. So for instance, if Dog had just initially rejected his offer of being in Grandmasters, somebody from that initial pool of players would have gotten in instead. I doubt it would have been me, but I know like Sidonia, for instance, was very close and was really counting on it to be able to continue his career in Hearthstone. So I'm sure that there were quite a few people who were holding out hope that they would just sort of go down the line of the initial pool of players to fill this spot, and then they would just go with the relegation rules for the after season 2 for moving players in which case Gallon probably would have gotten in through relegation because he at that point in time was the best performing North American player, and it would be difficult to do better than that, I suppose. But yeah, it was just a little bit strange, but Gallon's a phenomenal player. I don't think anybody was upset that Gallon got put in. He absolutely deserves it. I just know there were quite a few people who were really hoping that it would work differently.
Yeah, and apparently these rules, technically, if you read through the entire GM rule book, it has been, even since before GM started, the rule for what happens if somebody drops out has been, available in public and everything else. But I mean, come on, who reads that? So, but I think that... Yeah, there are a lot of rules in that book. So do we think that anyone else might follow suit? Because I think that Tice, he is one of the just flat out biggest streamers on Twitch now. He's just grown by leaps and bounds lately. Not that he was ever really a small streamer, but his streams are rivaling some of the biggest names on Twitch right now. And so I'm wondering if Dog was talking about, losing money and preferring to stream and everything else, then, do we think that Tice might also follow suit? Or, I mean, we talked a little bit about it with you, Cora, but I mean, Pathra is she's taken more heat than I think anyone.
Yeah. She's taken a beating for sure.
Yeah. So do we think that either one of them might step away as well? Do you think that Dog might be the first in a string?
Patra, I know, is competing in season 2. With her, her season 1 obviously was not good, and if they'd relegated at the end of season 1, she would have been relegated. So I think for her, maybe that will just happen after season 2. I don't know for sure. She certainly started to win quite a bit more near the end of season 1, and hopefully she can bring that into season 2 as well. But I know she's playing season 2 for sure. Tice, I think, is just a very different person than Dog. It seems like he's very committed to Hearthstone. It's pretty much all he streams unless he's doing some sponsored content. And I don't see Tice wanting to leave. Tice, it seems like, really loves competing in Hearthstone, and he would love to, for him, accomplish something like going to the global finals, potentially winning the global finals. I think that means a lot more to him than it does to Dog.
Especially since Dog just won, so he just did get a big chunk of prize money. So
it just seems like their priorities might be a little bit different. And especially, the big difference is Tice is from Europe and Dog is from North America. So for Tice, it's that you can't stream while your region is playing, I believe. So for Dog, that would be his prime stream time, is when the America's Grandmasters was happening. For Tice, he could stream before Europe Grandmasters was happening and then play his matches, and it might not disrupt his stream time all that much. Or he could stream during America's Grandmasters after Europe is done, because it would go Asia, Europe, Americas. So it was definitely more disrupted for Dog's stream schedule than it is for Tice's. But at the end of the day, I think that they just have very different priorities, right? Dog just seems to really love streaming TFT. He loves playing it. I know Hafu is pulling absolutely insane numbers from TFT. I don't think he's giving up Hearthstone. Dog's still been playing Hearthstone a fair bit with the new expansion release. I think we'll still see him playing it quite a bit from time to time. But it's certainly sad. I'm not terribly surprised. I don't see Tice leaving. But it is possible that maybe we get Patra leaving after season 2 if she doesn't relegate, depending on the reception of the community.
Yeah.
It's tough to say.
Do you think that Grandmasters, the way that it's currently set up, is it appealing enough to those big name streamers? Because I think obviously Hearthstone, Blizzard specifically, wants to have as many eyes as possible on their product. So is it possible that they could change things up? Is there anything they could do to make it more appealing to streamers like Dog that are maybe on the fence?
So the real reason why Dog left is because it was disrupting his stream schedule. And Blizzard's main goal with Grandmasters is viewership, is to get viewership up, is to have better numbers, is to revitalize Hearthstone esports and just make it a more happening event on Twitch, because viewership was way down last year. So they obviously don't want competition from their own players during the time that their stream is running. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that their policy is incorrect. I think their policy makes perfect sense. They're a business and they want people to watch their streams. It's certainly inconvenient for Dog, but then they need to make it very worthwhile. And I just don't know that they have the funding to make it that worthwhile. I think it's what, $500 for each match played, $1,000 for each match won. So even if you win both your matches in a week, you make $2,000. For Dog, that's a big loss. For a lot of the other players, they would never make that much from streaming. So, why not play in Grandmasters? It's just a very different reality based on how popular they are streaming.
It's a business decision. I mean, it's also personal, but at a certain point, it's a numbers game.
Mm-hmm. I don't think they could make it worth it for Dog specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's not something I thought of, or I think we really touched on when Grandmasters was announced going into it. Like there were other issues we thought of at the very beginning. One of them wasn't, maybe players who are like big names will just leave because they could make more money by just doing their own thing.
But it's a shame though, because that completely defeats the purpose. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, because Grandmasters, a lot of the big problems that we had going into Grandmasters was Blizzard was pitching this as the best players in the world, but also simultaneously they were including some players who are not objectively the best in the world. So it was a really interesting, I guess, marketing that was a little bit confusing for some of the viewers as to, what exactly is this? Is this a streamer league, or is this the best players in the world?
Or is this like the pinnacle of competition? And it really wasn't. I mean, it was fun to watch, but it wasn't the best of the best of the best. It was the best of the best who you've already heard of.
Yeah, it's like, what am I watching exactly? What is this league? What is the point? How did they get here? And a lot of the criteria was not particularly well laid out. Like, I was in the running to be in the league. Why? I certainly wasn't going to tell them no if they were like, Cora, we want to pay you every week to play some games of Hearthstone. I was going to be like, you got it, dude. Sounds good. But like, it's just a little bit confusing. But like, then if they want it to also be the best players in the world, they can't invite like Trump and Crip and Disguised Toast and the actual biggest draws in Hearthstone to be in the league. Brian Kibler, like, these people would never do this. Yeah. So I don't know. There's just some fundamental flaws, I think, in the overall plan. And then specialist format certainly didn't help. I think with the new modified Conquest format, it is going to be a better experience to watch for sure.
I am legitimately excited for it, and I haven't really been on board since the kickoff this year.
Yeah, I'm excited to just see more than Warrior, Rogue, and Mage every week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
very much. I think Specialist is a fine format, but not for something that is going on nearly 24 hours a day, 3 days a week. It's just too much.
Yeah,
much repetition.
I kept coming back around to thinking that it might have a healthy impact on the game itself. That if the single deck format, if it got too stale, that it would force more changes. But I think they've had a really healthy cadence of changes this year, and it still wasn't enough. So I'm not sure we can ask for more. I don't think that's really feasible, and I'm not sure it would be good for the game. I'm not sure if more changes than what we've experienced in 2019 would actually be a good thing.
Yeah. I would like, other than that format change, which I think was very necessary, I would love to see Grandmasters expand going into next year. I'd love to see like a minor league, because there's so little upward mobility, not just in commentary, but in the player sphere for Hearthstone right now. A lot of players who'd built their livelihoods as amateur to tier 2 players can't do that anymore because there's only the 3 Masters Tour events per year. So I would love to see something that is a little bit more inclusive, but then at the end of the day, that costs money. And I don't know anything about the budgeting process for this. I don't know enough to speak to that, certainly. But yeah, there are a lot of changes that I would love to see. I think there's potential with the league, but certainly if we lose more influential streamers, the league is going to look a lot less legitimate, right? Like losing dog really, really brings into question, is this working?
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree too with what you said about having a minor league, because I think that is probably the biggest problem that Grandmasters is facing right now, is that there used to be a feeling of even I could do it, with the tour system. It's like I could go to like the tour stop in Toronto and I could place well at that, and then I could grind ladder and I could get enough points, and then I could make it could be me too. And they've totally lost that feeling, because it feels like there's just a wall at the top of the Masters Tour right now, like where it's like everybody underneath is grinding online tournaments and everyone over top is playing and getting paid every week, and there's such a divide and there's no mobility there right now. And with the relegations next season, like, okay, so there's maybe 2 spots opening up, maybe, which like there actually probably won't, because Gallon has already come second in Vegas. So he's already at the top. He's got his Grandmaster spot now. He's at the top of the earners in the Masters Tour. So he probably won't move anywhere if he's in the bottom. So it's the kind of thing where like it's not really built to have a lot of movement, probably because they want to keep a lot of those big names in Grandmasters so that people keep tuning in. But I think a minor league could really help a lot of the problems that we're seeing. And obviously money is definitely a factor, but seeing more players, maybe paying them a little bit less. Cause I know that's like, for instance, like obviously I've been covering, everybody knows, a lot of Rocket League this year, and they have like a 2-tiered league system, and that works really well because it does feel like they play into the minor league every single season. Mm-hmm. So every season, everyone has a chance to potentially be a part of that minor league, and it feeds the scene really well.
And I will say, I've really enjoyed watching Grandmasters. I love getting to see players that I really like playing every week. It's really fun. And I love always having so much Hearthstone content available to me on the weekends when I don't have much going on and I just want to sit and play some Hearthstone and watch some Hearthstone. I think it's fantastic. And I think the casters are doing an amazing job. I know that going into this, there were, this was a very experimental year. And that they knew that there were going to be problems. And I do want to give Hearthstone esports credit, because I do think that they are working to fix these issues. And I do think they're being very receptive to community and player feedback. So I'm hopeful that things are going to grow and that they're going to use this year as sort of a reason to grow things and to maybe invest more money in it into next year. But obviously they're at the mercy of the bigger goal of Activision Blizzard and after the layoffs and just drawing away from esports funding, there's only so much that they can do, Yeah. So it's a much bigger picture that you got to look at.
That was what I was going to bring up if it didn't get broached. Is like, this is just a challenging year for Blizzard esports in general. The other like main game I cover is Heroes of the Storm. I'm still doing it. The show's doing great. Esports is gone, long gone. Yeah, they just axed it.
It's really sad.
And the Hearthstone team, from what it looked like from the outside looking in, was that there was almost no one left on the esports team. Like a lot of people were affected by the layoffs. So it was quite the. I can only imagine it was a challenge, to say the least. And you're right, Cora. I think they have been pretty receptive to feedback. They're clearly trying to make changes, completely changing the format in between season 1 and season 2 was not something I expected to see. I thought we were going to stick with specialist until at the soonest 2020. So to see them change mid-year, I think is hugely commendable. And also has just gotten you and I talking about, like, they should just keep switching formats, because then it just doesn't feel stale. Like, why does it have to be one format?
Last hero standing.
Yeah, give me that. And I don't even mind revisiting specialists. Like we've got the Masters Tour Seoul coming up starting on Friday. It's running the specialist format, and I'm not bummed. I'm actually excited to see it, because I know the next time I tune in for Hearthstone esports after Seoul, I'm going to be watching the new modified Conquest.
Yeah. I do think having a rotating format system would be really sweet. Weeks 1, 3, 5, 7 are Conquest, and then week 2 is Specialist. Week 4 is Last Hero Standing. Week 6 is Strike. Whatever you want to do with it. Maybe ban some cards one week. I don't know. Like, switch it up. If you want this to be an entertaining league system. The players are going to find a way to make the formats competitive. You have to assume that it's going to be competitive despite the format that you give them. The format is a great opportunity to make things interesting and to make things fun. And I think that there's certainly a way to keep competitive integrity and still liven things up a little bit, and make it so that TJ and Admirable don't have to cast 4 hours of Control Warrior every week because they were gonna fall asleep a lot. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of room for growth, and I know that at least from my experience working with the casters, they do have a fair bit of input, and they know what they're doing and they know what they want. So I'm hopeful that things will change for next year, but there's little that they can do between season 1 and season 2, I'm sure.
Yeah. They very much set it up to be like, this is what we're doing for 2019. Like, we're going with this. And I'm surprised that they've been as flexible as they have been just by changing the format. I mean, I think it was a good call. And it will be interesting to see the specialist format in Seoul. And then the what did they decide to call it? The Shield?
Yeah, I think
Shield phase.
Shield
phase.
Shield pick or something like that.
Shield phase, but yeah, I don't know what the format itself is called because it's still Conquest, right?
I think they're still just saying Conquest. I mean, if this works, if it's successful, I mean, this is just what we're going to start thinking of when we say Conquest.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big modification, but it is a modification. Like, it's still Conquest at the end of the day.
And I'm glad they're doing best of threes too.
Yeah.
So it'll be, I think, interesting to watch season 2. I'm glad they've changed it as much as they have. And Seoul will probably be a nice see a specialist tournament too.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to watch Seoul. Obviously, it's coming at a great time.
Yeah.
In the expansion cycle where the expansion has just been released. And I'm sure they planned it that way because viewership is going to be a lot higher. This is going to be the first time that we're seeing these decks being played by these players. And then Grandmasters right after it is going to gear back up. And I'm hopeful. I think this meta is quite good. Certainly there are problems and there are select cards that people have been questioning why they're so strong for a while now. But I don't start working in October, so it's not up to me. Please don't ask me.
You'll have it fixed by BlizzCon,
don't
right?
tell me to nerf Warrior. I don't have that power. I live in Chicago. I have no access to Blizzard clients, and I cannot fix things. So
even if you did, like, I love the
complaints to Reddit and not me.
I'm assuming that the majority of the replies on like your tweets announcing that you got the job. I'm hoping most of them were like with a good like dose of like, haha, I'm just being funny. But like, if anyone actually legitimately thinks that they're, I don't think you can just go in with reckless abandon and target things you just personally don't like playing against. I don't think that's how it works.
I think
Can you just delete Cube from the game, please? Like, just go into the back end client and just find Cube and delete.
You see me with like a bucket, and in the bucket is like Barnes, Carnivorous, Cube, Frost, Nova, Dr. Boom Mad Genius, and I'm just like throwing it in the trash.
Yes,
like,
somebody make that comic,
guys,
please.
Hearthstone for you. No, I think that there were like a few people who legitimately thought that I'd already started working, and they were like, "Oh, this is why the new expansion sucks so badly." And I'm like, "Funny, because I have nothing to do with it."
Wow. Oh, internet. Never change, except for please change and stop being so dumb.
It's so funny. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the entire month of September where, I don't have to do anything. It's going to be great.
Well, we'll have a lot more to say about the meta in just a second when we move into this week's strategy segment. But before we do, we have a sponsor to thank for today's episode, and it is Away Luggage. They are back sponsoring this episode of The Angry Chicken. If you haven't checked out Away's wonderful selection of luggage that you can go and travel with, and if you get a carry-on you can charge your devices with, because there's an optional battery that, you got a USB. You got a USB converter? Cool. You can charge whatever it is that you're probably burning the battery out of while you're slamming your Murloc Paladin games. It's good. You should go check them out over at awaytravel.com/TAC20. And also use the checkout code TAC20 to get $20 off a piece of luggage over there from Away. And you'll also support the Angry Chicken in the process. We're big fans here. I just got to go to a preview of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in Orlando this weekend. And I may have packed my away luggage and taken it with me. And while I was just sitting impatiently in my hotel room, waiting for the time to go to the park, burning through Hearthstone games, I know there's an outlet, but I just sat there where there wasn't an outlet with my luggage plugged into it, charging my phone because I have a battery in my luggage. I don't have to sit where there's an outlet. And it's even better in airports. It means I don't have to rub knees with people. I love it. So go check it out. Again, Carry-On and the bigger Carry-On both have optional ejectable batteries. They all have TSA-approved combination locks. There's a built-in compression system that helps you pack more into your luggage. There's free shipping within the lower 48 states, a 100-day trial that lets you try any Away product on the road. You can actually just travel with it, take it on a plane with you, and there's a lifetime warranty. All of this plus $20 off any suitcase when you go to awaytravel.com/TAC20 and use the promo code CAC20 during checkout. We thank them for their support. And now let's move into strategy.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay.
So we have had a full week of Saviors of Oldham shakeup, essentially. And kind of in true TAC fashion, we're going to more or less just kind of sit here and talk about the things we've seen, the more popular decks that are rising. I've kind of picked 3 main decks here to highlight to kind of do a bit of a deep dive, but we're going to talk about a lot of decks today in just casual conversation. But I want to kick things off with what surprised me the most out of Oldham, which is Control Warrior, because it seems to have taken off. If you look at stats websites, look at games played and whatnot, it appears to be the go-to archetype, period, and also like the go-to archetype for Warrior, essentially leaving Bomb Warrior just with no games played. There's really not a lot of Bomb Warrior representation on the ladder at the moment, which I just didn't see coming. There's a whole month of Angry Chicken episodes during the reveal season of me going, well, these Highlander cards are fun, but no one's going to get to play them because bombs are still going to be in your deck. And I was wrong.
Yeah, I think we were both on that same page because, I mean, we even got to do that interview right after Armadillo was revealed by the community. And we were kind of, when we were putting that together, we were like, oh, this is so cool. You know, we get to do an interview right away about the whole, like a new legendary, but it's Taunt Warrior. Like, is this really going to actually be a thing? Like, maybe in Wild, which was our go-to phrase, I felt like, for Oldham. But I'm pleasantly surprised that the Taunt package has actually made its way into Warrior. As much as, Control Warrior matches can be a little bit longer, I still prefer something along the lines of Control Warrior, where it feels like they're making decisions as opposed to Bomb Warrior that often felt like where the bombs were shuffled into your deck and then what they got off of Elysiana. Now Elysiana is still in the Control Warrior, but it just felt like there was so much RNG tied to the Bomb Warrior. Like, okay, if the next card I draw is a bomb, I lose. If the next card I draw is anything else in my deck, I win. And that wasn't a great feeling. So I'm glad the Control Warrior has taken over from Bomb, as well as it opened up the space for a couple of the other decks we're going to talk about today in the Highlander decks.
Yeah, that's exactly why I wanted to kind of kick things off with Warrior, because I think this development has just opened the doors to basically everything else we're seeing.
I think this deck is very powerful, but I do think it has a lot of counterplay. And that's the really, really important thing to remember. Obviously, Dr. Boom Mad Genius makes the deck possible and is an incredibly strong card and one that a lot of people are very unhappy with at the moment. But
at the moment, I'm pretty sure they've been unhappy with it for 6 months.
There are a lot of moments. But this deck has quite a few very strong counters. Namely, Quest Paladin, I think, is a lot better than a lot of people expected, and absolutely dominates against Control Warrior. They do not have the tools to be able to beat Quest Paladin. Highlander Hunter is also very good. Highlander Mage is very good. Quest Druid can get there. It's a strong deck, but it's not like it's a I would say it's not an oppressive deck right now, but it's certainly very popular. So just know if you're going to be running into it a lot, you do have options of things that you can play against it.
Yeah, and I think it is a good thing that it exists in this meta, because as much as we, joke about Dr. Boom, and when this deck does play Boom on 7, it feels like an insurmountable obstacle that you have to defeat. Boom does really enable this deck to exist, and I think Control Warrior existing is good. So I'm almost moving into the camp of maybe we just don't touch Boom, because I do kind of want Control Warrior to exist in the space, because like you say, it's not 100% oppressive. There's still a lot of feels bad moments playing against it, but I think having this exist as opposed to what the meta would look like without it is in the long run better for the game.
Okay, I'm with you, but can we touch Omega Assembly?
I've seen,
and maybe that's it. Maybe it's stuff around Boom that needs to be tweaked.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about how specifically they wish that Boom would give rush to mechs that are in hand or in deck at the moment, and not necessarily all mechs.
Everything. Yeah.
And I do think that has a lot of merit. But I will say, if this deck wasn't popular right now, we don't really have, like, Control Shaman isn't really a thing right now. Controlling Druid isn't really a thing. Control Priest isn't a thing. It's all Combo Priest. So if this deck was not powerful, I think Zoo Warlock and Murloc Paladin would be very widespread. And I think people will get very tired of Prismatic Lens into Tip the Scales very fast. Whereas Warpath can keep that in line.
And Murloc decks have a chance to win against this warrior. Like, you can high roll. Like, I've been playing a lot of Murloc Shaman. I went back to it after failing to get the Dad Legend after screwing around with so many different decks after the expansion hit. And so I finally have started my actual try-hard climb, and I've landed on Murloc Shaman, and my win rate against warrior is fine. It's a solid win rate. It's not like I just hew into warrior and I'm like, oh, it's over. Not doing this.
Yeah, it's not quite as polarizing as some of these matchups have been in the past, I think. Because like before, we would have, aggressive decks like Odd Paladin go up against Odd Warrior, and it was just like, well, we're pretty sure we know how this is going to win. Yeah, now this is going to go. So I think that it does feel like you have a lot more options against this deck, and the warrior itself has a lot more options depending on what they're going against. And I think the only other deck in this meta that really does fit this control archetype is the mage deck, is the control-y Highlander-y mage thing. And it's super fun to play. It's what I was playing a lot of, but it's not as strong. And if we don't have a strong control deck, then we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with you. I think the control warrior archetype that's very popular right now is doing very healthy things for the overall meta. Mm-hmm. And I've never been more happy to be wrong. I was really expecting to just come into this and be like, I hate warrior. They're insane. How is it still untouched? But it worked out. It worked out, at least for now. At least we'll see what happens. It's only the first week. Things might get weird. Bomb Warrior may make a triumphant return.
Yeah, I think things will certainly settle. I think Bomb Warrior is going to come back. I think people will eventually gear away from Highlander Mage and go back to Cyclone Mage, because I think it's just stronger. But certainly right now, the fun factor is very prominent. And people are wanting to play things that they enjoy rather than just the things that are the strongest. Yeah. So I do think the meta is going to be very different for Masters Tour, Soul, and Grandmasters than it is for Ladder right now. Mm-hmm. You're going to start to see a lot of decks that look very familiar to the last expansion.
I was going to say, yeah, Soul is going to be interesting because we're going to see if people are making swaps over to some of these decks, or if they're going to stick with things from the last expansion, like Bomb Warrior and like Conjure Mage too, because those are both really, really powerful decks. And I'm kind of wondering, even Rogue wise, what we're going to see, because Rogue is another deck or another class in this expansion that seems to have some interesting stuff, but doesn't seem to be as powerful, or doesn't seem to be competing as well against some of these other decks. So I know I've just been running over them with Murloc Paladin.
Same.
Yeah, the big questions that I have are like, I don't know, thinking about this meta in a specialist format is very strange, because I do think you have a lot of counterplay. So if you're expecting there to be a lot of Control Warrior, do you bring something that hard counters it, like Highlander Hunter or Quest Paladin, but that are much worse against aggro? Or do you bring aggro to try and counter? We do sort of have that rock, paper, scissors meta developing, but there's a lot more options that we have now than we had before. Priest has a very good combo deck. Paladin has a very good anti-control deck or a very good aggro deck. You have a lot of choices right now. So I'm excited to see what the best players decide are the best decks. Because I honestly don't know. Well, I have no clue.
Yeah, Highlander Hunter I think is a pretty good choice. I've run into this a lot on the ladder, and I feel like it would be a really good choice for specialists because the Highlander decks in general just have so much room. With all of this, the fact that they can only run one copy of a card means they have a lot of room to move things in and out for tech cards and different choices depending on matchups. So I think Highlander Hunter is probably the strongest of all of the Highlander decks, and it's, I think, very powerful. I'm actually very surprised because I thought Bran was hot garbage. I was super convinced that, Hunter wasn't going to have enough to make Highlanders work, and that Bran himself was just kind of meh because you couldn't, tutor for him, pull him out of your deck. He's not a beast. You can't buff him. But turns out Free King Crush is just super good.
Yeah, this deck certainly can grind out Warrior, but it can also play very, very quickly. With the Secret Package, you do just have the ability to sort of spiral things out of your opponent's control with Secret Keeper, with Sunreaver Spy, with Animal Companion. Zephyrus the Great, more often than not, when I'm playing this deck, just ends up being Fireball. And that's totally fine. I think I'm like rank 1, 2 stars right now. I'm going to hit Legend with this deck probably in the next day or so. But I'm very impressed by just how fast this can go. It can certainly just beat down mage decks because they have very little life gain. It can go long against Warrior. It can struggle a little bit against Zoo and against Murloc Paladin is what I've noticed. If you don't have pretty much exactly Unleash the Hounds at the right time or Zephyrus into like Lightning Storm, then you can die very quickly. But I'm really impressed with how flexible this deck is. It seems very strong. And I do think, like you were saying, Joss, in a specialist format, when you can put in Mind Control Tech or Hungry Crab or Hunting.
Oh my God, Hungry Crab.
Oh God, we're back to it.
Arcane Shot or things like that. I do think that can be teched in a very anti-aggro way, or it can be much more anti-control. You could even put in a natural copy of King Crush. You could put in the 6/9 Scorpion guy that pulls out a minion from your opponent's hand if you're trying to beat combo decks. It's just a deck that it seems like can accomplish every goal. And I really like that.
That's another thing that just is impressing me so much with Zephyrus is that in this deck, in those aggro matchups, it's good to just drop Zephyrus early and find ways to survive and keep the game going and stabilize. And it's not just always about winning the game. I just can't believe they made this card work. I can't believe they made this card.
Yeah.
I will say I was at Blizzard about a week before the expansion dropped for my on-site interview for the design job, and they were teasing this card. A few of the developers, Peter Whalen, was talking about how his favorite card that's ever been created is in this expansion, and it's the card that's taken them by far the most time to develop and the most money to develop. And they were like, so we hope it's really good because we're all really excited about it. And then as soon as I saw Zephyrus, I'm like, oh, that's it.
That's the card.
Peter was mentioning that they were going to reveal it in the stream with Kibler, and he's like, and I think Kibler's going to love it. So they were very excited for this card. And I think rightfully so. They've never done anything this complex before. And honestly, just seeing Celestalon, Chad Nervig tweeting with all of the updates about this card and everybody tweeting to him the ways that they're breaking Zephyrus and things that they need to look at on the team. It seems like they're very committed to making this card as good as it can possibly be and to keeping up with it. And I really like that.
Well, it seems like they're also, the way they designed this card, it is super powerful. And I know I've been very frustrated when I've been playing a match and then someone plays it against me and I'm like, no, it's going to give them literally the perfect answer. And it does. And I usually end up losing after that. But I think that there's still enough play around this card, manipulating the board, manipulating your mana in order to make him give you the right answer. It's not just like, if I do nothing and slam it on 2, it's going to know that 6 turns from now, I'm going to need a board clear, So I think that there is still a lot of like different decisions that are to be made around this card. It's not just an auto win card, even though sometimes playing against it can feel like that. It's like, it feels like that because your opponent has made a good choice as to where and how to play the card. So I am interested to see what it's going to look like, because I'm assuming we're going to see a lot of it in Grandmasters and in Masters Tour, but I think it might be okay for now, but we'll see. Because I mean, those are the best Hearthstone players, right? So they're always going to play him well. I want to see how many games that's going to swing.
Yeah. Again, though, I'll go to bat for it because you have to play well up until the point that you play Zephyrus. You have to set up a condition where Zephyrus will win you the game, and you have to know how to set it up. It's rewarding a lot of knowledge, which I really like. Although, you know, sometimes it's simpler than that, but that's also on the flip side of that. That's why I'm just impressed with just the fantasy of this card, the fantasy delivery, because like I think it was my first damn game trying Highlander Hunter. I'd finally decided on what deck list looked good to me. I took it out, and I had a Hyena Alpha and the token stick. They didn't deal with it, and the next turn I'm looking at this like, God, if only Hunter could run Bloodlust, I'd win the game right now. I'm like, wait, Zephyrus. I play it and there's Bloodlust, and I'm like, good Lord, this card just it does exactly as it says. I'm wishing for this card right now, and that's what comes up.
I do love every time I play Zephyrus, and if I don't see the lethal out, but he does, I'm like, oh, he's got my back. He's a good buddy. Like 30 times Mass Dispel has been lethal. So many times I'm like, oh, I just need to twist together this board, and he's like, no, you don't. You can do this and just win the game. And I'm like, wow. You are so right, my guy. You are so right.
Yeah, he's a mixed bag of. Yeah, he both rewards you for your extensive game knowledge, but also teaches you. Like if you're going down the wrong mental path. But yeah, Highlander Hunter has just impressed me to no end. But also the first night I took it out, I think I got 3 games in 90 minutes. But this was also like night 1 of the expansion. We were all being so greedy. It was wonderful. So I wanted a faster deck. And the next day I took out Murloc Paladin for a spin, which is the third deck I wanted to really deep dive into, because there's a lot of chatter happening around this deck right now.
This deck makes me feel gross.
This deck makes me feel dumb for when we covered Tip the Scales on the show and we just kind of moved right past it and forgot that Prismatic Lens was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Silly me, I failed to account for the fact that all of my opponents will always draw Prismatic Lens by turn 4 because they're just great at Hearthstone.
Well, this is the insane thing, and Joss, you and I were talking about this off stream. Like, you don't need to. This deck can get there without that. That is just this insane high roll that just turns into a power spike, the likes of which we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, and I think it really does depend on who your opponent is, right? Because like we were talking about before the show, I had a game against a Quest Druid that ended up going all the way through until they couldn't deal with my Nomi. Like that, I literally had no cards and no options left. And I played both of my Tip the Scales for the full cost of 8, and they were still insanely good. But I was playing against a very slow, very greedy deck. So, you know, if I had been against another aggro deck, or if I had been against, you know, pretty much anybody else, I probably wouldn't have won. But Tip the Scales, even just for 8, is really good. Even just missing out on all of the battle cry effects, because you still have, you know, bluegill warriors that have just charge. You've got your war leaders. You've got, you know, just the little 1/1 dude that makes all of your dudes get more attack. You've got all of that, and they don't necessarily need the battle cries. So plus Mermy, he's adorable. Why wouldn't you want to play him?
He's also sticky as hell.
Yes.
They should have just named him Sticky Murloc.
As ew. As you know, high a cost as Tip the Scales has, even at the full 8, sometimes can just win you the game, because just having so many on board is crazy. And even like Finley, like this deck plays both Finley and Zephyrus, which are one of cards. The entire rest of the deck is all duplicates, and they still work. It's insane, because Finley is just a body, and he's a Murloc, so he gets pulled out by Tip the Scales. And then also usually because of Tip the Scales, your deck has no duplicates quite quickly in the match. So then you could just play Zephyrus and find Pyroblast or something insane. Actually, no, it won't be Pyroblast because you never make it to turn 10. So it'll just be Fireballs.
I really like the design of the deck. I think it's a very cool deck.
Yeah.
And in theory, it's one that shouldn't be able to blow you out every game, because if you don't draw Prismatic Lens, then you don't get Tip the Scales before turn 8. But man, it sure seems like a lot of the time they have it when they need it. And obviously, if you get Prismatic Lens, you can get your second Prismatic Lens off of it and then get Tip the Scales, which slows them down a little bit. But just the engine of Murloc Tasty Fin to be able to draw additional Murlocs after that, the fact that you're sacrificing none of your hand because Prismatic Lens is drawing you cards, and then pulling the cards out of your deck, you're always going to have reload after that. So it's very difficult to run this deck out of stuff. And if you do run them out of stuff, then they just Chef Nomi you, and you go, it's a cool deck, but it's one that I'm worried about. Yeah.
We haven't really seen Murlocs like this. I mean, this is I think this definitely the stronger of the two, but Murloc Shaman is also very strong, and I think both these decks work as well as they do because they can go long if they have to. Because, like you said, like historically Murlocs have really failed because they run out of gas eventually. They don't have enough draw engines or ways to generate more cards. But here we are with Tip the Scales in Paladin, and it's been working already, but it's even better now post expansion with Shaman. We have the I always forget the damn name of the card, Underbelly Angler. Like these two cards I don't know, back like last Thanksgiving, I was playing Murloc Mage, just having a great time. Just like, if I high roll, a high roll. If I don't, oh well. But with these decks, like it's like, oh, if I have to play for board, it doesn't feel bad. I've got an Underbelly Angler in my hand. Cool. I know I can reload down the road. I can actually contest for the board if it calls for that. And for Paladin, it's like, well, I've got Prismatic Lens, whatever. Let's just do what we have to. Let's sacrifice our whole board because we'll just make a new one. It's crazy, but it's also kind of cool, and well, I don't know. I'm curious what aggro would look like without these Murloc decks. But maybe the answer is aggro. There's a really cool aggro warrior right now that I don't think enough people are paying attention to. But Murloc definitely seems to be the winner here. As far as the aggro
they're starting to come on to the aggro warrior. I think there was someone at like rank 8 legend who was playing that deck yesterday. So it seems like that's got some legs as well. Yeah,
I haven't played it personally, but I went up against it. That's how I became aware of it. I'm like, what is this deck? This is super cool. And then went and pulled up stats, and then sure enough, found that this seems to be it's a second place to Control Warrior. There are so many games played in the Control Warrior archetype by comparison. Anything seems kind of tiny by when you compare the two, but it is very, very cool if you haven't seen the aggro warrior. It runs charge minions, and it has minion copying effects because of the new cards that warrior got, and it's just a very quick reminder of why charge is terrifying and why minion copying abilities are so strong.
Yep. Every once in a while, Corkron Elite comes back to the game from his slumber, and Gromish Hellscream makes an appearance, and then you die way before you think you're supposed to die.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Warrior hasn't had a super viable aggro deck in a while. And
that's like what Pirate Warrior, I guess, would have been the last one.
Yeah, it's definitely not a class that people who have only gotten into the game in the last year or two have known to be aggressive, because its control options since Dr. Boom Mad Genius and the old quest Fireplume's Heart have been so strong. So I'm all for this. I think this is freaking cool. And honestly, anything to get Warrior off of control and give people a chance to play the deck in a different way, or to play the class in a different way, I think is really, really nice. But this is certainly also a very scary deck.
Yeah. So kind of rapid fire style, some of the other popular archetypes that have popped up, post expansion. We've got a new version of Combo Priest, as I was kind of expecting to see. If you've ever played a Combo Priest before, if you've ever messed around with Inner Fire and Divine Spirit, you can probably take this deck out and do just fine. It's just more powerful than usual because of some of the new cards that they got. Psychopomp and High Priest Amet they're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few decks that can deal with a High Priest Amet that's been Divine Shielded, and then you throw like a Light Warden or a Cleric down beside it. There are very few decks that can deal with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's some scary stuff. For the audio listeners, if you don't remember Ahmed, it's the 4-mana 2/7 that reads whenever you summon a minion, set its health equal to this minion's. It's working as well as we thought it was going to when we talked about it in a preview a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, this deck is so strong that you don't need the quest.
I was gonna say I've seen quest variants of this, and you're right. Like, this deck can just get it done without the quest, to the point that putting the quest in it seems like just straight up overkill. Like, yeah, it's super strong. It's stronger with the quest, but like, you literally don't even need it because it just, oh man, it's insane. But that heal for 3 and the buff of +3/+3 is ridiculous.
Which is good because I can just lean on that when I have to contend with the fact that I definitely overvalued the priest quest. I'll just be like, well, no, it's not that it's bad. It's just that there's more powerful things you can do without it. You don't need it.
I wasn't wrong.
Yeah. It's just that there's so many other things that it's not required, which is kind of a really interesting place for priests to be, because they've been in kind of a bottom of the barrel place for a little while now. So the fact that it's like, yeah, their quest is powerful, but they don't even need it because everything else is just more so, that's a really cool place for priest.
Mm-hmm. The Secret Hunter, it's back. It plays actually pretty similar to the Highlander. It's just if you play the Highlander and you want consistency, you should check it out. It runs a lot of the similar cards, but obviously more than one of each card.
Yep.
I
haven't seen it very much, actually. I've seen a lot of Highlander, but not as much Secret.
I'm not surprised. I just really like Hyena Alpha, so I'm interested in this deck because I can run 2 of them.
Hyena Alpha is very strong. I do think that the Highlander Hunter functioning similarly to this deck, but being able to run a super fun card like Zephyrus means that more people will just want to play Highlander Hunter, but they function very similarly and they have a lot of the same strengths.
Yeah. But, if you're missing some cards or whatever, maybe check it out. I always like to give people options. Tempo Rogue is still around. It still might just run you down with weapons, but now it has more weapons because of Hook Scimitar. They're also opening up with Pharaoh Cat. I tried the new Tempo Rogue or after this, and compared to some of these newer decks, it just feels so slow, so draw dependent. I don't know, like compared to so many of the other options that are out right now. Maybe it just feels moldy, and I just want to play new things.
I actually haven't seen this one. I've seen the Quest Rogue, actually.
I'm not a big rogue person unless it's allowing me to generate a bunch of random cards that I can have fun with. Then I like rogue. So I'm very much interested in Quest Rogue, not so much a kill my opponent as fast as I can kind of player, but that's just me.
Yeah. We've also, Mage is still around. They're still running Conjurer's Calling. They're still Pocket Galaxying, because why wouldn't you? But they're also running Tortollan Pilgrim. The card has been a total standout. I've seen so many Tortollan Pilgrims this week.
It's so nice because it does a lot of what we were talking about when we were reviewing the new Elise card, right? So Tortollan Pilgrim basically lets you get an effect in your deck without having to have a duplicate of the card. So like you can Flame Strike twice, which is something that a Highlander deck shouldn't be able to do. So it like shores up that weakness. And I've been playing a lot of this control big spell mage and having a lot of fun because King Pharaoh's, another new card, is a whole lot of fun to play with. Like just the idea that you can, have this, the puzzle box, this 10 mana spell that's like so big and heavy and clunky in your hand, but alongside King Pharaoh's, you've got this like huge potential bomb that he can draw from this. Like, I mean, the number of times I've played King Pharaohs and got Deathwing is insane. And even if you play that alongside another new card, the Naga Sand Witch, then, you know, you're still, even if you're sometimes like bumping up the cost of your lower cost spells, it just all plays so well with Pharaohs, because then maybe you're getting 4 or 5 of these like 5 mana minions to help fill your board. And he's just such a big bomb in this deck, and he's so much fun to play. So I'm really, really enjoying this. And I wish it was like, it has some pretty bad matchups, and it has some, since a lot of it is RNG based, it has a lot of potential to fall flat on its face. Like, I literally pyroblasted myself in the face with Puzzle Box on stream last night. So it's like, it can totally just fall flat, but it's a lot of fun while it's killing you.
That's all right. You deserved it.
Yeah, I know. I played Puzzle Box, so I deserved it.
The first Puzzle Box that got played against me, I pre-tilted just when I saw it cast, because you remember me and my opinion of Yogg back in the day. It just tilted me to no end, and I was like, oh great, well they're gonna get all the perfect bullshit, and I'm gonna lose this game. And nope, they like killed themselves off a Puzzle Box, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I've had like one very good Puzzle Box, and then the rest have been like, like nothing really ends up happening. Maybe you draw a couple cards and then you burn some stuff, and maybe the board's
kind of thing. It pretty much, with 10 spells, you can basically guarantee that the board is going to get cleared. You're going to draw or generate a couple of cards, and then, you know, that you kind of go from there, which was very similar to what used to happen with old original. Even if it killed himself, Yogg, you could really rely on that. But then, you know, after he got nerfed, not so much, right? Because he would kill himself all the time. So now it's like you can get a board wipe, but then, you know, maybe you get a rushing 5/5 Wyvern or something, and, you know, he can. It's more consistent, but there's also just this huge variance in the spells that it's not necessarily like a go-to good thing.
Yeah, I think it's more difficult to build a board with Puzzle Box in this meta, but it can happen. Certainly, Mass Resurrection is a card. Like you were saying, the Unleash the Beast is a card. It's certainly good enough to warrant playing in your deck. I think it's pretty spicy, and it's a lot of fun. It's always exciting.
Yeah. Hear that, Garrett? It's fun.
I don't like
even when you die, you're like, oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. Clearly, I didn't praise Yogg enough. That's just what happened.
Listen, if I'm going in the wild and I want to have a good time, I love me some Casino Mage. Okay, I'm with you, but when effects like this make it into the meta, I get a little salty. Quest Paladin, you've brought up quite a few times, Cora. It turns out not nearly as write-offable as I think a lot of us, and I'm throwing myself in that. You can go back a couple of episodes and listen to me go, oh man, Paladin just seems terrible this expansion. Turns out not so much the case. Not only do they have probably the best aggro deck out there right now, but their quest deck is making some waves.
Yeah, it's not bad. Certainly not awesome against Zoo Warlock, not awesome against Murloc Paladin. It can certainly just not draw Consecration and then be at the mercy of a bunch of minions on the board very fast.
Yeah.
But against Warrior, for instance, you have basically every threat that you're playing is automatically 2 threats, because you're going to be using that hero power. So on turn 7, you go Mechano Egg hero power, and you get 2 Mechano Eggs, the Death Rattle into Robosaurs. Basically, the Warrior's best counterplay to that is Super Collider, but even still, they only have 6 charges of Super Collider if they're playing 2 of them, which most decks are playing 1 to make room for a Plague of Wrath right now. And then you have 2 Mechano Eggs, 2 Mechanical Whelps, Kangors in this army to bring them back and duplicate them immediately, and then Undertaker. And immediately on turn 10, you go Undertaker, copy, and then your Undertaker can Death Rattle into however many Mechanical Dragons or Robosaurs. It's just too much. It's too many threats for a Warrior to deal with unless they kill you very fast, and that's very difficult unless you're playing the super aggressive Warrior deck. So if you're running into a lot of Control Warrior, or I think this deck's quite good against Druid. It's very good if you're running into like Quest Warlock, but that's probably not happening much.
Even the Mage, because I was running into a lot of Quest Paladins when I was playing the Mage, and I was like, man, I cannot with them having access to that hero power. I just can't clear it enough, and everything has death rattle, and I have no silences. And
yes,
oh,
anything
man.
slower is going to be very susceptible to that paladin deck.
Yeah.
So I've had good luck with it. I got 11 wins with it in the Brawliseum. It's a lot of fun to play. It's really straightforward. It's one of the easier decks to play right now. It's just play your reborn minions and then play your big stuff and copy it. So for newer players, I think this is pretty accessible.
It's been a big surprise for me coming out of the launch. I think we were like most wrong about Quest Warlock and this and being good, and the most wrong about Quest Paladin being bad.
Well, I mean, I definitely said that making 2/2s instead of 1/1s is powerful. It was just the question for me was really, are they going to be able to stick stuff to the board to be able to copy? Turns out yes. So Quest good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cora, just one more time, how do you pronounce Undertaker?
The Undertaker.
See, Joss,
No.
that's how it's pronounced.
I refuse. Won't do it. It is
I'm a wrestling
Undertaker.
fan. I get a kick out of it every single time.
Awesome.
Reminds me of that beautiful day when Undertaker threw Mankind off a steel cage 16 feet in the air at Hell in the Cell. Except it's Hell in the Cell because that's the real life. So I don't know what they said in the game, actually. It's just wonderful.
Well, we're not going to deep dive every single deck that has come out of this. There's still Zulak is back. You should go, give it a shot if you haven't already. Evil Recruiter, Thrasher, Vulture, Takan, they're all working out very well in Zulak. And as I kind of mentioned, Quest Warlock not working out nearly as well as we originally thought it was going to. But there's still people out there trying to make it work. I'm still seeing that quest come up every now and then when I go up against the Warlock. Folks still doing the work, putting the work in, trying to get it to go off. And then I'm still running up against Mech Hunters, just pre-expansion Mech Hunter, no new cards. They're just doing the same thing they've been doing. But overall, I'm pretty ecstatic with how the meta has been shaken up with Uldum. I'm really
There's a
happy.
lot of options.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how long it stays like this, how it develops, if anything just kind of blows our minds at Seoul this weekend.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
There's still so many decks that I haven't gotten around to playing. So it feels good. It feels good to have options and to be excited to play the game.
Yeah. Well, before we take an email and wrap the show up, we have one more sponsor to thank today, and that's MeUndies. That's right. It's everybody's favorite time on Angry Chicken. It's when the hosts have to talk about their underwear. If you have not checked out MeUndies, you owe it to yourself because it is the softest damn underwear and loungewear. Like they make I call them pajama clothes, stuff I lounge around the house in, but I wouldn't necessarily want to leave the house in unless I'm going to like Walmart. All of it is super
Walmart is
super
a
soft.
fancy location.
Oh, you get dolled up to go to Walmart. Yeah, I get the 3-piece suit out every time I go. Yeah, when I'm going to pick up my pizza rolls, that's what I put on. Yeah, but these
Speaking of pizza.
these are a micromodal fabric, which is so much softer than cotton. So it doesn't matter like what style of underwear you're going with, or you're picking up their lounge pants. They even have onesies if you're a onesie type of person. It is the softest material I have ever clad my body in, and they also have really, really fun prints. If prints aren't your thing either, by the way, they have normal muted colors. So whatever your comfort zone is with how you like your undergarments to look, MeUndies has got you covered. And they're also giving you 15% off with our URL. So you should go to MeUndies.com/TAC. You're going to get 15% off your first pair. Also, you get free shipping, and there's a 100% satisfaction guarantee with MeUndies.
And
so
you will be satisfied.
And
I feel like you're underselling this underwear, Garrett. It's so comfy.
how is saying it's the softest thing I've ever clad my body in
I
underselling
don't know,
it?
man.
can MeUndies hook a girl up?
Yeah,
I'd like to try. It sounds like a phenomenal product.
They also just came out with new fancy actual bralette things. So the last one they had went around the back of your neck, which I have a lot of neck and jaw problems, so I couldn't really wear it. But then they came out with over the shoulder straps, and I'm like, yes, thank you.
That sounds nice.
Oh, so comfy.
Nice.
Especially just throw it on like under a hoodie because you don't need like a real bra when you're wearing a hoodie.
Exactly.
And hoodie season's coming up, so that's.
And it has pizza on it, so.
Oh, you got pizza?
I got pizza.
I got pizza boxer briefs, and I was stoked about it.
I now have matching pizza bra and undies, and I'm so excited.
The best part is when you're staying with your significant other, you hide your MeUndies from them. When you get a new like crazy print like pizza, don't tell them. And then when you go to a preview for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, when you're going to bed that night and you know you're getting comfortable for bed, they're just like, what are those? Why?
Why not?
Yep. So check them out.
Make life a little more fun.
Yeah, check them out. They can hook you up. All you have to do is go to MeUndies.com/TAC to get 15% off your first pair. Go check them out. Let them know the Angry Chicken sent you. And now, let's take an email.
Hello?
Hello, it's me.
Hello?
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
You can send your emails to tacpodcast@gmail.com, or if you're supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC, first off, thank you. But you can also get into the patron-only Discord. You can send us a message directly on Patreon. There's all kinds of ways to just like skip the inbox. But Brenton writes in this week and says, the new expansion is out! There's an exclamation point there. Things won't be slow or stale for a while, but think forward 2 months from now. Let's say, hypothetically, the meta is stale. Yeah, I really have to stretch my brain to imagine a moment where Hearthstone's meta kind of freezes for a bit. What would you like to see for another event a la Rise of the Mech? What's the theme? What are some cards getting buffed? It may be early to think about, but are there any older cards in Standard right now that you thought had cool ideas but just didn't make it into Ladder? That's a thick one.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, I would love to see another Rise of the Mech event. I thought that it went really well. It was, card buffs and stuff. We got to see Pocket Galaxy finally getting some play. As much as now people think it needs to be nerfed, I'm like, no. Pocket Galaxy, yay. I think that it would be nice to see another Rise of the Mech event, especially if they're going to give us something along the lines of Snip Snap, because I think Snip Snap was a really cool infusion of flavor. It was a powerful but not overpowered card and got people thinking about, Boomsday and mechs and all the rest of it, which was something that never really saw a whole ton of play outside of a couple of classes. So I think Rise of the Mech was really successful, and I would love to see another event like that take place halfway through. And if we're looking at buffing cards, I mean, Rastakhan is probably the expansion that we'd be looking at, right?
I mean, it would be next following Boomsday.
Yeah,
and
following Boomsday.
Going to Rise would seem weird and like very soon.
Yeah. So I think
also,
that the Loa just never really worked out for me, which chat room is yelling Loas right now. Yeah, Loas. And yeah, Rastakhan definitely felt like it was a little bit overshadowed because, Frozen Throne was still viable when Rastakhan came out. So it didn't really have the impact that like Kobolds and Catacombs did. So I would like to see come some of the Loas, just other than Shirvala.
Shirvala worked out. John Alai had its moment. But like Bonsabdi, like I was so stoked that Bonsabdi was coming to the game. We didn't really make too much of a splash. Halazi, like, did anyone bother with Halazi or freaking Gonk in Druid? Like, yeah, there was. I wouldn't say that
Warriors got a Kali.
Yeah, I don't think they should just blanket buff all Loa because there's some worked out, but most of them I think could use a second pass and some extra power. Honestly, the one that sticks out to me like a sore thumb is Grawl the Shark, because I think Grawl's effect is one of the cooler ones out of that entire set, and just a cool effect in general, but didn't really pan out.
Yeah. And it's funny because his Spirit did see some play, right? Spirit of the Shark, see rogues play that, but
yes,
Loa itself. Or Loas.
I would like to see a dragon themed event. Obviously this is the year of the dragon. We didn't get a single dragon tribe minion or card in Uldum. So I think maybe it doesn't need to be just one legendary. Maybe it can be a couple common dragon synergies. Maybe they do a dragon legendary for neutral and then some dragon synergies to go along with it. But yeah, it would just be cool to actually have something dragon themed in the Year of the Dragon, unless of course the third expansion is going to be dragon oriented, which I don't know what it is yet. I'm not working there yet. I have no clue.
Cora, how much is Kibler paying you?
Brian, email me after this. We can work something out.
Are you getting like I know you're really excited about a dog. Are you getting a Shiro puppy that we don't know about? What's going on here?
I think it would be cool to have a thematic dragon event. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm on board. I think that at least from what I would guess, because they did say, Year of the Dragon, it's going to be this big theme and there's going to be, the overarching story and everything else. I'm with you, Cora. I'm not seeing a whole lot of the dragon. there was no dragon in Oldham at all. So it would be really interesting to see either. I think they kind of have to do either an event or the third expansion needs to be super dragon focused because where are they? We need them to intervene with this League of Evil.
I mean, how much does the theme, like the year theme, really have an effect on the sets? Like Year of the Mammoth, it felt like out the gate with Ungaro, it was like, okay, I see why you called it Mammoth, but then we had Frozen Throne and Catacombs. That wasn't, I don't know, I didn't get a Mammoth theme from that. Again, Year of the Raven, Witchwood, okay, I see that. But Boomsday and Rastikan's Rumble,
yeah,
not really.
Yeah. But they specifically said they were going for a year-long theme this year, and I haven't seen much of the dragon stuff.
The third expansion is just going to be a little bit more firepower, We got to bring in the big boys to help actually get rid of the League of Evil, and maybe that's going to include some iconic dragons. I think dragons are always a really cool direction to take in Hearthstone because World of Warcraft has so many iconic dragons, and there are quite a few that haven't been explored in Hearthstone yet too. So maybe we're speculating a bit much, but I think it makes sense to me at least.
Speculating
is what we do. This is what emails are for.
I think that's the definition of podcast. If you go to Webster's dictionary,
speculation station.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd like to. We've gotten 2 Deathwings. It's Nosdormu's time for like a new form of Nosdormu. I want to see him actually see some play.
Yeah, I mean, we did get Chromie, but we haven't had a whole lot of bronze dragons, really, like named bronze dragons that do cool timey-wimey things. So I'd be down for that.
As someone who hasn't seen Doctor Who, you say timey-wimey a lot, Joss.
It's a cool phrase.
Anyways, thank you so much for your email, Brenton. Keep those emails coming, everybody. tacpodcast@gmail.com. Patrons, keep dropping messages in the Discord. IO Mega Drive. I know I mentioned in the Discord we were going to get to your question. Today's episode went a little long, so we'll save that for next week.
We kind of covered it too because it was basically like, is Control Warrior a problem?
Yeah, so, we can have a deeper conversation next week though, if it's a little quieter. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the show. Thanks again to those of you supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. Some of our newer patrons. Thank you to Christopher M. and Fabian. But also a huge thanks to our Patreon producers, Declan H., Sean C., and Cheesy Bob. You can follow the show on Twitter at TAC Podcast. This podcast and many others like it, and the whole back catalog of these episodes can be found over at amove.tv. But before we go, Cora, you've been such a rad guest. I would love to invite you back, but I would imagine it'll be a little while before you're allowed to make podcast appearances. So in the meantime, where can everybody keep up to date with you?
You guys can all follow me on Twitter at songbird_HS. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/songbird Cora. Probably not going to be streaming a terrible amount right at the beginning of me starting my new job, but I do hope to get a stream schedule going. And I do still want to keep up with the community while I am working now at Blizzard. And then, follow me on Twitter. I'll be talking quite a bit about this transition in my life and probably complaining a lot about what it's like moving across the country because I don't anticipate that will be terribly fun.
We'll see. It'll be an adventure.
There are a lot of your fans in the chat room that I'm sure are concerned. Will there be future Twitch Sings streams?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, we'll go with yes.
Excellent.
Well, everyone, make sure you go follow Cora. Joss, before we go, where can everyone find your work outside of TAC?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. If you guys are interested at all in World of Warcraft, we are taking on Heroic Ashara tonight. So do come and check that out. That is starting at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time on twitch.tv/JossPlays.
Rad. I'm Garrett Art on Twitter. Everything I do, I already mentioned it. It's at amove.tv. Go check out Into the Nexus if you're still playing yourself some Heroes of the Storm. If you're not, you should play it because it's not dead. They just had a huge freaking update to that game, and it's awesome. So you should go try it and then go listen to Into the Nexus. Other than that, amove.tv for everything. Go check it out. I'll probably be doing something that has something to do with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge very soon. So if you listen to my solo feed, R2T2, imagine hearing something over there. I spent too much on a lightsaber, y'all.
That's impossible.
Heck yeah. I'll be getting my fill because one of my big investments is going to be a Disneyland annual pass. I'm not even pretending like I'm not going to do it.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's great. You're going to be so close to it, too.
I know.
I'm like a 2-hour drive to Orlando.
I'm
where I
like
live
20
in Florida,
minutes
so.
away, man.
Awesome.
Dangerous. It's very dangerous.
All right. Thank you again, Cora, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Until next week, job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.